Well, Todd, everybody, welcome to Cover Crimson. Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. We're going to talk more Alabama practice. One practice in the books, one more coming. Where are we at right now? What are we looking for? And much, much more than that right here on the show today. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, and let's get this thing going. Good to see all you guys, by the way. Roll Tide. Love saying that. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie, brought to you by mybookie.ag, promo code next round to double your initial deposit. All right, we're talking about spring practice. We're talking about practice here. Practice.
We're going to have to make some of this stuff work, this every other day thing. Granted, I mean, Alabama's about to go on spring break next week, so we'll get the Wednesday practice, which will be open to the media, or at least the beginning of it will, and then we'll get one more practice that no one will be able to attend on Friday. So we'll get some more talking points, but there was just, like I said yesterday, there was so much to talk about. You can't get to everything unless you plan on talking for 2.5, 3 hours. So we just decided to break it up a little bit, hash out some of these things that we noticed, and have a little fun with it.
Well, it's fun to have practice back, but they definitely try to stretch it out, right? And Kalen DeBoer talked about having more time to work out, pump iron, and then get back out there the next day. Different, where it's all in the morning instead of at night. He likes to get it done and get it out of the way, have a press conference and move on, right? So here we are kind of looking at this offensive line. Caden Proctor is going to be limited this year. Where was his role? Who's going to take over for Tyler Booker? And then some freshmen that you wonder, Lloyd and Carroll, those guys, are they going to have an impact? And maybe some other guys too. I mean, there's a ton of really talented offensive linemen.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, and I did want to go ahead and pull up the video because there's some stuff going on that I want to talk with people about, kind of walk them through it. Number one being, right there in the background. So you got 78 there is going to be Jackson Lloyd. 65 is Micah DeBose. Jackson Lloyd is up to 310 pounds now, which I think is absolutely huge. Like, I thought he would be one of those Jonah Williams, Tyler Love, types of players where he shows up a little bit light, and it takes him some time to get up in that range where you feel really good about it. That was one of the biggest issues that I had with him. Kind of like, you worry about Keelan Russell and you worry about Justin Hill, and it's like, one thing about all three of these guys and several others is that they're showing up kind of ready to go in more of a prepared playing weight. And I think that speaks volumes for Alabama's strength and conditioning program. I think that speaks volumes for the work ethic of some of these players. But that is one thing that I wanted to talk about, because Micah DeBose looks pretty good too. But one of the things that we noticed, and I need to check and see, okay, so we're sitting at about 232, which I'll find it in a second. You're going to see Caden Proctor wearing a black no-contact jersey, which we were told he's going to be limited throughout the spring to, kind of limited to individual drills. Mm-hmm. James Smith is not in a black no-contact jersey, or at least not when he's in the background of going through his drills. So I think there's varying degrees. Like, he's going to be limited as well, and I think that kind of hurts the defensive line some. But for Caden Proctor, he's a lot more limited. And when you look at these tackles right now, it is with Caden Proctor being out, with Elijah Pritchett being gone, you've got Jackson Lloyd, you've got Arkel Anugum, the transfer from Ball State, you got Wilkin Formby, and then you've got a bunch of different guys that they're trying out at tackle, and that's something else that I wanted to talk about here in just a second.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, so I love this that you breaking down these videos too, and I'm sure this is why they don't want the game on television. They don't want guys like you breaking it down and
easy now.
And look, hey, what do we got back here? Look who's hurt.
I told everybody I'm Nancy Drew when it comes to this stuff. But when you talk about the tackles, one thing right here, this seems like the first team offensive line. You're going to see Gino Vandermark working at left guard here in just a second. You got Jaden Roberts at right guard, Parker Brailsford. But I want you to notice something, because in the other video, the one that they posted on Twitter, you did notice Olaus Alinen playing left tackle. And it looks like, just based off of, other photos and stuff, it looks like Gino Vandermark is the guy who's playing next to him. But I want you to watch this. You got Gino Vandermark there at left guard. And then as it turns and pans back, you're going to end up seeing Olaus Alinen, and he just got done blocking somebody.
Right.
That tells you based off of those two clips, he's playing left tackle, which makes sense because right now you're not going to put a true freshman like Jackson Lloyd in there with the first team defense right away. You have Wilkin Formby, who's trying to get more comfortable at right tackle. And then you've got Caden Proctor, who is out. So really, there's no available left tackle options unless you plan on putting Arkell Newcomb, which that would make sense. But him being a transfer, he's kind of like Jackson Lloyd. You got to have him earn it. But one of the things that Kalen DeBoer said yesterday was he mentioned that they're getting, guys like Alinen snaps at tackle, but they also really want to focus him in on guard because that is what you don't want to do is just waste time. You need a body out there, somebody that you can trust, but do you really expect Olaus Alinen outside of an emergency situation to be a left tackle for you? If you don't, then if he's a guy that you're trying to progress at guard and you think he could get involved in that left guard competition, then you're kind of wasting his time and wasting yours. Now, he's probably willing to do it, but I think that's the battle, the conflict that Kalen DeBoer and company are dealing with. Now, in this next clip, because I also want to point this out, everybody has mentioned, Michael Carroll is a guy that Kalen DeBoer said is working at tackle. Olaus, it'd be more so at guard, but probably getting some snaps at tackle. We know Olaus Alinen's getting some snaps there, but I also want you to pay attention to this because I haven't seen anybody mention this. Now, granted, we mentioned this guy as a possibility before, but you got Joe Ionata there at center. You got Rock Montgomery there at right guard, and Cam Dewberry, 71, the Texas A&M transfer at left guard. This seems like the second team offensive line because Vandermark's working with the first team at left guard. He's not going to be working with the centers, which is going to push Joe Ionata up with the centers with Rock Montgomery working at right guard. But look who is at right tackle in this clip. Casey Poe. So that is something we know that Olaus Alinen's getting snaps there. We know Michael Carroll's getting snaps there. And based off of this clip, and I haven't seen anybody talk about this yet, Casey Poe is also getting some snaps at tackle. So all three of these guys were potential options that we had mentioned leading up to spring practice who could get some reps there. They're all three more natural guards, though. So, you like the flexibility. If they have to play that spot, that's fine. But it is also very unfortunate because the depth or the lack thereof at tackle is really hurting the development of some of these guys where it feels like, to at least some degree, they're still getting snaps inside, but you would like to see them kind of be able to spend all of their time inside if possible. But you're having to do some of these things and get creative due to the lack of depth.
That's scary. Was this like this when Saban was there? Were there years where they struggled in the same area, or were they pretty deep? Seems like I mean, besides injuries, I mean, he was normally well stocked.
In tackle, I feel like it has become such a premium because it's kind of like the NFL where not only tackle starters, like they come at a premium, the importance of that, and you're not getting the development with the offensive line that maybe you once got, and that has become kind of a big issue. But, from a depth standpoint, everybody's trying to stack as much as possible. And now that NIL is possible, you've got guys who would typically maybe be like the third right tackle on Alabama's roster who is, getting paid to go be somebody else's, compete for a starting job somewhere else, where they're at least going to be second team, if not first team. Right. And they're getting paid a little bit more money to do it. So it's spreading the depth a lot more thin. That is becoming a massive problem. I think Georgia's dealing with that with their offensive line. Alabama just right now, they have a plethora of interior options. They got some of those options who can play outside. But as far as trusted outside options, now this spring is going to be great for Newcomb and Jackson Lloyd. But, one of the things that is, Jackson Lloyd being 310 pounds and seemingly being more ready, I think is critical to Alabama's depth moving forward because I think he's a talented enough player. He's super athletic. He's going to be one of those Kalen DeBoer tackles. You're probably not going to see a whole lot of versatility with him as far as him playing a bunch of different spots. In fact, he might be limited to either just right or just left tackle. But I just think having that option, Newcomb is a very talented dude, very raw, still has some work that he needs to do on that front. But during this time, Wilkin Formby needed to kind of grow into that right tackle, starting right tackle role. and these other two guys really needed as many reps as possible. So it is not a great thing that for the second spring in a row, Caden Proctor is either going to be limited or out, but it is giving some other guys some opportunities.
Do you think he had a surgery that we don't know about?
Well, you know, Kalen DeBoer mentioned multiple things as far as like a lot of these guys, they're, you know, it was lingering issues from last season. And just, you know, typically during the off season, you have guys get surgery, knock that out, give them plenty of time to kind of get back to 100%. And I think that's just what a lot of these guys are dealing with. I don't know specifically what the injury is for Proctor, but him being in a black no contact jersey, and then you've got guys in comparison like James Smith. That might have just been, I mean, sometimes they're wearing black no contact jerseys, and then when the media leaves, they put them on, but media wasn't really there. So there was no reason for James Smith not to be in one. So it could be something like that, but it also could just be varying degrees of injury. And just James Smith might be a little bit more available to do certain things. We know that Caden Proctor missed some time early last year with that shoulder injury. Maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe it's something completely different. We really don't know. But that is something that's rather, you know, concerning. Like, they need to get him back as quickly as possible. But at least we know while he's had to spend some time limited or out, he's moving in the right direction with his weight going from 369 to 360. So I'm hoping he gets somewhere closer to 350 before the start of the season. But we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Could this be an area where Alabama goes into the transfer portal in the spring?
Yes. And here's, once again, this is going to be the biggest problem. Caden Proctor is your starting left tackle. Mm-hmm. You got him out of the transfer portal last year. Critical get for Alabama, both last year and for this year. But, you know, I don't think anybody's questioning when the guy's healthy, he's your starting left tackle. Wilkin Formby is trending towards being your starting right tackle, and they like the upside of him. They like how he's developing. He got his feet wet last year, did some good things down the stretch as far as seeing a huge uptick in his usage, averaging, I think, about 42 snaps over the last 3 or 4 games. That's almost getting up there where it's like you were getting almost starter reps at that point. And so, like, he's projected to be the right tackle. And then you've got young guys and developmental players. You've already got Anugum, who is a player who understands that he needs more development, but he also has said, you know, he was told he would be, you know, get a chance to compete for a job. I guarantee you Jackson Lloyd has not been told, hey, we expect you to be at least a 1 year away kind of guy. He'll get some opportunities too. So how do you pitch that to any potential tackles on the market where it's like you've got your top 2 spots seemingly pretty locked up? Wilkin Formby has not locked it up, but I would say it's very much trending in that direction. And then you've got like some other guys who you've promised opportunities to get them better, mop-up duty, maybe compete with Wilkin Formby. That, like I said, it's not a guarantee. How do you convince somebody that is really going to make a huge difference, you know, on Saturdays? How do you convince them to come to your program? That's what Alabama's probably going to run into. But, yes, I think from a body standpoint, they're going to go out there and do everything they can to get, you know, a quality depth player at the position, at least one. And hopefully it could be the caliber of a Geno Vandermark there on the interior this past season, because they got him post-spring, and that was absolutely huge for the offensive line.
That'll be, I say this all the time, interesting. I mean, you know, to see if someone steps up, maybe by the time this is over, there's a change of perspective too. You know, maybe someone comes in there and kills it, and they're like, you know what, this guy's grown into the spot. That's what you hope for. Instead of having to go in the transfer portal. Now, one guy that we didn't have last year that we thought was going to be a major factor at wide receiver was Jalen Hale. And he was injured. I think it was like right around now, right? During the spring practice. And it was a tough injury because, you know, he was kind of that guy that was going to take the lid off the defense, you know, the fast guy, you know, run down the field, catch deep balls. Didn't have him. Obviously, Hollywood Williams and, you know, Jeremy Bernard, but the rest of the guys that didn't step up all transferred, had a whole bunch of these guys out. And now you're seeing Hale back at practice again. So what's it look like for him so far?
Well, and this is something else that I noticed. It was in the Twitter video. I don't know really if I want to take like a ton of time to go like find the specific spot. I probably should have found these spots. I got it listed for the longer video for some of this stuff, but I don't have it for this in particular. But the reason that I say that Jalen Hale is running with the ones to at least a certain extent. Doesn't mean he's like the main guy. Could be a spot rep here or there, but people are wondering about the leg, the knee, what's going on with all that stuff. It's like, he's got a big brace. You can see that in all the clips and videos and everything, but he seems to be moving well in the limited that we've been able to see him. There's one clip, and I think it was a, I'm trying to remember the actual play that happened. I think the defense did something pretty good. Oh, it was the Tim Keenan interception, which is phenomenal, by the way. So you see Tim Keenan, you see Zabian Brown, you see there's multiple guys. Now I'm kind of drawing a blank, but as I'm looking through the clip, I'm like, all of these guys are first team guys, offense and defense. And then, you see that new number 8 on Jalen Hale, and he is in at wide receiver. So that kind of tells me, okay, this guy is at least getting some action with the first team. That's not overly surprising. There's another clip that is in the longer video that is kind of just going through the wide receiver drills in the indoor facility. Kind of stood out to me because the pecking order was not exactly how you would expect, but Jimmy Bernard, being the veteran, was the first guy. Then you had Ryan Williams. Then you had Isaiah Horton, who we're all expecting to be the wide receiver 3.
Right.
And then you had Rico Scott as the wide receiver 4, and Cole Adams working directly behind him. So for Rico Scott, we've talked about him being in that top 6. I think with, Cole Adams and Rico Scott and Jalen Hale right now, that would probably round out my top 6 with those top 3 guys. But seeing that in action, that could just be a drill. You can't always take away something, major from that. But I do find it interesting that was the pecking order, because that kind of falls directly in line with what we're talking about. And you're seeing Jalen Hale work at least some with the first team offense. So I think right now they are in really good shape at receiver. And I think Jalen Hale and the skill set that he provides can really help this Alabama offense.
No, I'm sure he can. I mean, and last year, how disappointed were we in Law and Prentice? And some of these guys, you're like, man, we really expected you to kind of be more of a playmaker. And then, then next thing I know, turn around, it was like 6 guys transferred out. Of those guys that transferred out, are there any that you feel like Alabama's missing right now?
No. And that even includes the Caleb Odoms. Why? Because of Isaiah Horton. Like, I think Caleb Odom's going to be a good player. I think he is more of a tweener than a guy like Derek Meadows. Like, Derek Meadows to me feels like he's a wide receiver only option. Caleb Odom was very much in he's probably never going to be a great blocker, but you can see him getting up to 240 pounds, being kind of an Isaiah likely type of player, where he's a move tight end, great pass catcher, does a little bit of blocking. I guess Mark Andrews could fit in that too. He's not really a blocker either, but it's like, that's sort of what I envisioned for Caleb Odom. And I do think he would have eventually been a very good player for Alabama. But, you talk about Kendrick Law, I just think, he could probably do some really good things for Kentucky. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he went and he had a pretty good season. You find the right ways to use him. Great. Kobe Prentice being at Baylor. There's just nobody based off of who they brought in, because Latsier Brooks, 5'9", 188 pounds already. And you watch the athleticism in the practice clip that was posted last night on X. It's like, he feels like he's going to be a factor as a depth player. You like Derek Meadows long term. I still like Bubba Hampton, who's out right now, or limited right. I think he is out. Long term, but like, you start talking about these guys who can contribute in 2025, and there's just a bunch of them. And I just think that the skill sets fit better with what Kalen DeBoer wants to do. Like, in some ways, like Jeremy Bernard, his role in Washington's offense, if you could have used Kendrick Law in the exact same way, they had some similarities in how you could line them up and how you could use them. The problem is Kendrick Law didn't have the ability to create separation on the short to intermediate levels. He was more gadgety, at least from a consistency standpoint, and that was the huge differentiator between those two players. And when you bring Jeremy Bernard in, into the fold, what do you need, Kendrick Law for as far as that? So he kind of was limited in what he was asked to do. But I think Alabama right now, with the length that they've added, this feels like a lot more of a Kalen DeBoer wide receiver room than last year's.
Good. Well, that's a good sign. And you started going through that list, and I was like, man, adding Horton really gives you a lot of depth. You feel a lot better about that starting 4. Going back to the Michigan game, flicking around, like, we don't have anybody that can catch the ball. We don't even have a quarterback that can catch the ball. At the beginning of the game, I'm like, who's doing anything right now? So I love that, kind of having Hale in there, and then you put him at 4. I've been excited about Cole Adams. I just like those possession guys, that just have great hands, and like the Waddle in the NFL years ago. Not the Waddle that Alabama had, but he was like on the Bears. He just like always kind of catch the ball, like slide around and catch the ball. And what was the guy from Louisiana that Alabama had? Slade Bolden. He was one of those guys. And look, I loved him. The bad mistake going into the NFL, because he would have killed it in NIL that last year, and he would have caught a ton of passes. I mean, he would have had so much more value having returned. And I kind of feel like Cole Adams is kind of along that same line.
Well, part of me thinks Slade Bolden was kind of pushed. It felt like Alabama was a lot more confident in the talent that they had. Like, they had recruited so many guys that were top 100 recruits and was just oozing with talent all over the place. And whether it be missed evaluations, whether it be lack of development, a lot of factors can play into it. But just none of those guys really probably panned out the way that they were supposed to. And, in hindsight, it's like, okay, maybe Slade Bolden could have helped. And Cole Adams is a lot more dynamic, in my opinion, than Slade. Right. But in the same way, like Slade's role, he was a trusted option. Granted, I'm not saying he didn't have some, the fumble, a couple of drops here and there. But for Cole Adams, it's like you can trust that if it's a 3rd and 6, you can go to this guy. You've got probably some other players, a Ron Williams, a Jeremy Bernard. Like, how much attention is Cole Adams really going to be getting? And just that style of player, when you have like the Wes Welkers and the Randy Mosses, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like just this absolute freak that's taking away tons of attention. But then you've got this guy that, the defense can't really keep up with, and he's a consistent underneath option. He's a reliable safety blanket for your quarterback. Just helps everything run a lot more smoothly. And whether it be Ty Simpson, whether it be Austin Mack, or whether it be Keelan Russell, especially if it's Keelan Russell because he's a true freshman. But those safety blankets, when you can give them as many of those as possible, it can really help get their confidence going. They can generate a little bit of yardage after the catch. And as I said, I think Cole Adams is a little bit more dynamic than some of the other style of players that Alabama's had in the past.
Join us on covercrimson.com, $25 off the annual subscription. And we are spending a lot of time on there. Clint's been killing it for a long time, but they've roped me into a lot more on the message board. And I've loved it, man. It's been a lot of fun. Like, this would be a great message board topic. I bet you we could go a thread of all-time best Alabama wide receiver. And I mean, can you imagine like trying to figure out that it's Julio Jones? But I mean, look, he didn't win the Heisman like Smitty or any of these guys on the current team going to stack up there. Could Ryan Williams eventually be known as the greatest of all times? I mean, he had the most electric touchdown taken away by bad officiating. That's another great topic. But we get on there and we talk about stuff, guys. Please join us on the message board, covercrimson.com, 25% off right now, the annual subscription, because it's 2025. Clint on there, Stacy's on there. A lot of you guys are on there as well. Wes, always love having Wes on there as well. Basketball game coming up Wednesday. We're always good on the basketball thread. So thank you guys that are already a part of it. And if you're not, please join us on covercrimson.com. All right, let's talk about those big dudes up front, right? And there's one of them right there, Tim Keenan. Rawr. Let's get this guy will get after you, Clint.
Yes, he will. And he looks really impressive. Just he's that typical nose tackle that you need as far as kind of being a clogger in the middle, opens up some opportunities for your, second level defenders, your linebackers, really commands a lot of attention as far as the opposing team's run game. I did want to talk a little bit about a couple of things with this group. There's Tim Keenan.
There he is.
Yeah, there's our guy. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to bring up about this clip specifically. first of all, Tim Keenan, absolute unit. I mean, the guy is just, he's a square and good. I mean, just winning the leverage game against this guy being, 6'2" and being 325-ish pounds, very tough to do. But look at old Jeremiah Beeman, number 92 to his left. That's a guy who is now sitting at 312 pounds, was 296 last year. So he continues to add substantial weight. And he's playing that nose tackle position, more of the 0-1, 2-eye type of stuff, A gaps and head up the center. He's a guy that needed to put on some more mass, and he still looks very physically impressive. And then you look to Tim Keenan's right, and you got Jordan Renaud, now 260 pounds after playing last year at 268. And he looks phenomenal. But I was talking about this earlier, shared it to Twitter, talked about it extensively on the message board, covercrimson.com. But just he kind of feels like a guy going from 268 to 260. Now every other main bandit in the really the only other bandits, because we don't really know for sure if Cavante Henry is going to play Wolf or Bandit. He's listed as a linebacker on the roster, but every other bandit that they have right now is 20 pounds or heavier than Jordan Renaud. And he played at less than 2% of his snaps over the guard or further inside. And that compared to a lot of these other bandits, they were seeing, 7-8% roughly of their snaps in the same position. So fewer snaps inside, feels more like a power 4-3 defensive end, kind of from a body build perspective, from a skill set perspective, feels very Zadarius Smith while he was at Kentucky. And he's gone on to be I guess you being a Baltimore Ravens fan, you're pretty familiar with Zadarius Smith. I mean, he's had a lot of success on the NFL level. And, I'm not saying Jordan Renaud's going to be him necessarily, but I think from a build perspective, from a fact of what you kind of saw as Zadarius Smith, that is the type of role as a power end that I think Jordan Renaud could really thrive in. And so I'm hoping that they're kind of embracing that. They're not going to ask him to do a whole lot of the inside stuff. They're going to say, okay, if we're going 2 bandit looks, but we still want to have guys that can have that transitional pass rush where it's an early down, you're trying to stop the run, but then you figure out it's a passing play. Can they immediately flip that switch and get after the quarterback? LT Overton is really good at that. I think Jordan Renaud can be really good at that. And so maybe there's some situations where you can beef up your run defense and have, instead of a wolf, have 2 bandits out there. You feel a little bit better about holding up against the run, but you're not sacrificing too much when you have to kind of transition to it being a pass rush situation. I'm hoping, and the Keon Keeley's the same way, by the way. Now, granted, he's 20 pounds heavier right now, 280 compared to 260, but he feels like a guy that you're not going to play a whole lot on the inside either. I'm hoping that they're embracing that a little bit more. And while that might take a wolf off the field, in certain situations, I think that, you can mix and match these bandits a little bit more. Like you got Kelby Collins, who will be playing a lot inside probably at 285. And then you've got Jordan Renaud playing the same position, who's not really going to be asked to do that. In fact, he's going to play very limited snaps inside. He'll be more of a pure power edge. I love the combination of skill sets between these guys.
I worried when Damian Payne transferred to Michigan that this would really hurt Alabama's ability to get after the quarterback. Who's replaced him for Alabama? And do you think that that's going to be a big loss for the Tide up front?
Yeah, I think Jeremiah Beeman. I really do. I think that when you talk about what Payne provided, he had some disruptiveness at times, but I think his biggest contribution was as a run defender.
Right.
And him being kind of a nose, that's what you expect. Like that 1 tech, 0 tech, the primary responsibility is to hold up against the run, because the quickest way to the end zone is a straight line. Right. And so the ball starting behind the center. So you got to be able to make sure that teams are limited running inside, and that's what Damon Payne, that's what Tim Keenan provides. But they both provided Tim Keenan more than Payne, but they provided some complementary disruptiveness a little bit. But James Smith has the real disrupting potential. Edric Hill is more of a disruptor. Steve Mbamo, I think he's got some disruptive traits. He can end up playing the nose. He could play, the 3 tech. So I think that they're still in good shape, but a lot is going to be required of Beeman, because you really want to have that second nose that can kind of give Tim Keenan, a bigger guy, some spells, give him some plays off, and you're still getting quality production. And it's not just, from an interior pass rush perspective, because I think Beeman has more upside as a pass rusher than Tim Keenan or Damon Payne. But I think that from a run stopping perspective, he's got to prove that he can hold up. And I think he did a good job of that in the bowl game. Don't think he played terrible at all. And now he's got close to 20 more pounds on him. I just would like to make sure that he can do that consistently before I pass any true judgments, because that is the primary responsibility of that position in particular.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. People look at the Vanderbilt game, the Oklahoma game, gave up a lot of yards on the ground, but I feel like the offense is going to be better this year. And if you're scoring points, you're not as worried about it. We just had such an inconsistent offense down the stretch, and it cost Alabama a chance to get into the playoff. What are you working on? CoverCrimson.com. What can we expect to see from you over there?
A lot going on. I mean, obviously we're discussing a lot of this over on the message board, but also going to continue on with those roster rankings, try to finish those up. I got a text from Stacy earlier when he was busy yesterday and couldn't watch the video. He watched it this morning, and he said, I can't believe Mick somehow conned you into revealing who your number 2 player was in LT Overton, which I thought was funny. But it's been a very fun process. It kind of has let me know where the roster stands. That'll be continuing. But we got a lot of other stuff we're going to be talking about too. And tomorrow, it's just like I do with the practice videos, it's like I do with everything else. Now, here's the thing. When you're there in person, no one can limit what you watch. For those periods, like, I get to watch exactly what it is that I'm looking for. We're not limited to camera angle and what they show. That's going to tell me a lot about, what is Justin Hill doing? Is he playing purely Wolf? Are we seeing him, is he running with the linebackers a little bit? What's going on with some of these other guys? I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And if you want to know something about somebody, I mean, it's not like they're doing full teamwork where we're going to be able to see like scrimmage reps, but we'll get to kind of see, okay, where's this guy in the pecking order? Where's this guy working? How certain guys look physically, how they're moving. If there's anybody you want to know in particular, definitely let us know in the comment section. But I'm going to specifically prioritize the people over on the message board, just because, they have, I've already asked the question and gotten some responses. So get on over to covercrimson.com. If you want to see anything or at least hear about anything from tomorrow's practice, definitely let me know.
You guys that are here every day, we'd love to have you over there.
We definitely would
continue this discussion when we're not doing shows, and build that in an area where we all kind of get together and talk about Alabama 24/7. So thank you for being here today. We're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code next round to double your initial deposit. Like Clint said, we'll be back tomorrow. We've got, make sure that you check out Respect the Process that dropped this morning, and then we'll be covering practice. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll talk to you at the message board, and roll tide, everybody. Thanks